They thought I would compete, but I chose to focus. The morning sunlight spilled through the half-open blinds, dust particles dancing in the beams, illuminating the small, quiet kitchen where I sat at the oak table with a cup of chamomile tea warming my hands. Margaret, age 68, her silver hair neatly pinned, looked out the window, watching the suburban streets slowly come to life, the hum of distant lawnmowers and passing cars the only sound accompanying her thoughts. It was another ordinary Tuesday, yet beneath the routine lay an unease she had learned to sense over decades of family life. Vanessa, her daughter-in-law, had always been careful to weave subtle tensions into gatherings, and Margaret had long since noticed the calculated smiles, the fleeting glances, and the unspoken hierarchies that shaped every interaction. Today, Margaret felt it again, a familiar prickling at the edges of her awareness, as though something hidden was waiting to reveal itself. She traced the rim of her teacup with a finger, remembering breakfasts past, the laughter and warmth that had once defined these mornings, now replaced with caution and silent observation. Each detail mattered: the placement of a chair, the way Ethan, her son, avoided meeting her gaze, the hurried arrangement of plates and silverware, small clues in a larger, unfolding pattern she had come to read with careful attention. Margaret's mind did not jump to anger or despair. She had learned the power of stillness. She observed the kitchen light catching the polished surface of the counter, the faint scent of vanilla lingering from yesterday's baked scones, the soft ticking of the wall clock marking each measured second. Every element was noted, every gesture catalogued. She understood the subtle art of patience, of letting others reveal their intentions while she remained outwardly calm, an unshakable presence amid the currents of manipulation. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she recalled the gatherings where Vanessa had insisted on small changes, the gentle reframing of family routines, the careful nudges that positioned Margaret as secondary in conversations and decisions. Those moments, at first barely noticeable, now aligned into a pattern, a roadmap of quiet domination masked as politeness. Margaret's gaze shifted to the stack of letters by the window, unopened bills and invitations she had yet to sort. Each paper was a fragment of her life, pieces of a puzzle that demanded careful attention to understand fully. Today she would not act rashly. She would not compete in the games Vanessa had set before her. She would focus, observe, and plan, allowing the truth to surface in its own time. The kitchen remained still, the sunlight slowly shifting across the wooden floor, highlighting the faint scratches that told the story of years of family meals, homework, and quiet conversations. Margaret inhaled deeply, letting the warmth of the tea settle into her chest, a grounding ritual, a reminder of her own presence and agency. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked, a car door closed, life moving with ordinary rhythms that contrasted the undercurrents within her own home. Margaret did not flinch. She did not react. Instead, she sipped her tea, eyes scanning the familiar walls, the photographs of past family milestones, each frame a testament to the love she had invested, the patience she had cultivated. And in that moment of quiet, she understood that control did not require confrontation, that power could be exercised through focus, observation, and the measured responses that came from decades of navigating the complexities of family ties. Today was another morning, another opportunity to witness, to learn, and to prepare. Margaret's lips curved into the smallest hint of a smile, not of triumph, but of readiness, a subtle promise that when the moment came, she would act with precision and unwavering composure, letting the currents of deception reveal themselves naturally, while she remained steadfast at the center, calm and unbroken. Margaret placed her cup on the table, the warmth still lingering on her palms, and turned her attention to the envelope of invitations she had set aside yesterday. The dining room, bathed in late morning sunlight, carried the faint scent of polished oak and the subtle aroma of fresh flowers she had arranged in a vase at the center. Every detail of the room was familiar, each scratch on the wooden floor a memory of meals shared, conversations held, and laughter that once filled these walls. Yet today, a quiet tension hovered in the air, imperceptible to anyone who might have passed through, but undeniable to her practiced eye. Margaret moved deliberately, folding a stack of napkins with precise care, the repetitive motion grounding her as she observed the subtle signs of disruption in her household. Ethan had lingered in the living room longer than usual, avoiding the kitchen entirely, his phone in hand, eyes darting occasionally toward the hallway as if to measure her reaction to something unseen. Vanessa had emerged from the bedroom moments ago, her carefully neutral expression giving away little, yet the tilt of her head and the brief pause before she spoke betrayed an awareness of Margaret's scrutiny. Every gesture mattered. The way Vanessa had arranged the silverware, the choice of table linens, the sequence in which she had prepared the plates. Margaret catalogued each one silently, a record kept not in ink but in sharp attention, a mental ledger of intentions revealed through subtle cues. She moved to the window, drawing the curtain back slightly to watch the street below, the rhythm of neighbors walking their dogs, the distant sound of children laughing from a schoolyard, providing a normal backdrop that contrasted with the undercurrent of her own home. Her mind retraced events from recent weeks, small occurrences she had at first dismissed, a comment about rearranging family photographs, a fleeting reference to scheduling conflicts with casual ease, a suggestion to update the family calendar without her input, all seemingly minor, yet now assembling into a pattern of control and exclusion. Margaret did not react outwardly. She remained seated, a quiet observer, sipping her tea with measured slowness, allowing herself to absorb each nuance and each inflection. She reflected on the patience cultivated over decades, the subtle art of observing without yielding to frustration, of allowing others to reveal themselves while she maintained composure. The sunlight shifted, casting long shadows across the floor, and Margaret noticed the slight irregularity in the placement of the chairs around the table, a silent signal of intended hierarchy that had not gone unnoticed. She adjusted one slightly, a small act that went unobserved, yet reaffirmed her awareness and control. Each minute passed with deliberate observation, each small motion contributing to her understanding of the delicate balance within her household. The air remained still, the quiet punctuated only by distant traffic and the hum of the refrigerator, while Margaret traced the contours of the room with her eyes, each picture frame, each decorative item, a reminder of her place in this life she had built and nurtured. She did not need to speak, to confront, or to assert dominance through loud protest. The act of seeing, of recording, of holding her attention steady, was sufficient. Margaret's focus remained unwavering, a silent witness to the subtle machinations at play, her presence an anchor amid shifting dynamics, her mind calmly processing and understanding while the household continued unaware of the depth of her insight and the steady resolve she carried within. Margaret rose from the kitchen chair and walked slowly toward the living room, each step measured, deliberate, observing the subtle interactions around her. The sunlight shifted through the curtains, casting long, soft lines across the carpet, highlighting the faint patterns worn into the fabric from years of family life. Ethan sat on the sofa, fidgeting with the corner of his notebook, avoiding eye contact while Vanessa moved about arranging the cushions with precise care, her posture immaculate yet stiff, betraying a controlled tension. Margaret noticed the small details, the way Vanessa placed the silver candlesticks slightly off-center, the subtle alignment of coasters on the coffee table, the deliberate spacing that subtly redirected attention away from Margaret herself. Every nuance mattered. Margaret did not speak. She did not move quickly or gesture. She allowed the room to unfold naturally, letting the ordinary moments reveal the extraordinary truths hidden beneath them. A soft breeze from the open window stirred the drapes, and Margaret noted the sound of distant lawnmowers blending with the faint hum of a passing car, grounding her awareness in the familiar rhythms of her neighborhood, while the undercurrents in her own home remained sharp and precise. Memories surfaced as she passed a framed photo on the mantel, her hand brushing lightly over its edge, recalling birthdays celebrated, holidays marked with laughter, and quiet Sunday mornings when the house had been filled with warmth and attention. Now, each memory felt like a coordinate on a map of understanding, guiding her toward a clear comprehension of the pattern unfolding in front of her. Vanessa spoke softly, offering a casual comment about rearranging family albums, and Margaret noted the timing, the tone, the calculated pauses, each element a signal of intention. Ethan responded with a brief nod, eyes still avoiding hers, and Margaret catalogued the behavior without a flicker of reaction, preserving her calm and steady presence. She returned to her seat near the window, sipping water from a clear glass, letting the liquid anchor her in the moment while her mind traced the sequences, the small manipulations, the undercurrents of control and subtle exclusion. Every glance, every adjustment in the room added to the narrative she silently compiled, a story revealed not through confrontation but through patient observation. Margaret understood that awareness was itself a form of influence, a quiet power that allowed her to perceive and interpret the intentions of others without revealing her own. She felt a calm satisfaction in her clarity, a sense of readiness for what might come, knowing that each step she took from here forward would be informed by careful attention, measured restraint, and the steady accumulation of insight that only decades of experience could provide. The room continued its gentle rhythm, a mixture of ordinary sounds and deliberate gestures, and Margaret remained at the center, silent but fully engaged, her presence both witness and anchor, quietly shaping her understanding and preparing for the moments when subtle observation would translate into decisive, composed action. Margaret lingered in the living room, her gaze sweeping across the carefully curated space, noting the arrangement of photographs, books, and decorative objects that Vanessa had adjusted in the last week. Each movement of a chair or shift of a frame seemed innocuous, yet Margaret understood the subtleties of intent that lay beneath such minor actions. She traced the edges of the rug with her eyes, remembering the footsteps of family members over the years, the small scuffs marking moments of joy, laughter, and routine, now serving as a backdrop to the delicate patterns of control slowly emerging. A gentle breeze fluttered the curtains, and she allowed her mind to wander briefly through the memories of holiday dinners, birthday parties, and Sunday breakfasts, each event a testament to her enduring patience and careful attention to family dynamics. The sun angled across the room, illuminating a stack of letters and documents she had left untouched, each one a fragment of past planning and present awareness, a silent archive of her life and her attentive observation of those around her. Vanessa approached the counter, arranging the coffee cups with meticulous care, glancing occasionally toward Margaret as if measuring her reaction. Ethan remained at the sofa, quietly observing, caught between the roles of participant and bystander, his expressions careful, guarded, yet betraying subtle tension. Margaret did not react outwardly. She allowed herself to be a calm witness, her breathing measured, her posture composed, a quiet signal of strength and attention. She moved deliberately to adjust a cushion slightly, the action unnoticed, yet grounding her in the awareness of her environment. Margaret reflected on the weeks leading up to this morning, the small directives and adjustments that had subtly shifted the household balance, each offering a piece of insight into intentions carefully masked as routine. She sipped her tea slowly, feeling the warmth spread, a steady reminder of her own presence and agency. Each glance exchanged, each pause in conversation, each gentle gesture contributed to a larger understanding of the household's intricate rhythm. Margaret cataloged every detail internally, building a mental map of behaviors, intentions, and the subtle currents of influence that she had learned to navigate. Her focus was unwavering. She did not need to speak to assert her awareness or to test her understanding. The room maintained its gentle cadence, the hum of daily life continuing outside the window, children laughing from the nearby schoolyard, cars passing on the street, ordinary sounds providing contrast to the concentrated attention she applied within. Margaret's awareness extended to every aspect of her surroundings, from the slight tilt of a picture frame to the manner in which Vanessa handled the silverware, each element contributing to her comprehension of the dynamics at play. She allowed herself to process these observations calmly, knowing that understanding preceded any action and that her measured patience offered her the clarity to navigate the complexities of family interactions. In the quiet of the morning, with sunlight casting soft shadows across the floor, Margaret remained poised, her presence serene yet alert, a composed observer fully attuned to the subtle machinations unfolding around her, her mind steadily weaving the intricate patterns into a coherent understanding of what lay ahead. Margaret remained seated at the edge of the sofa, her hands folded neatly in her lap, observing the subtle movements around the room. The morning light had shifted, casting gentle patterns across the carpet that highlighted small imperfections and worn areas from years of family life. Vanessa moved between the chairs and the coffee table, arranging magazines and placing coasters with exact precision, her expression carefully neutral, yet Margaret detected the slight tension in the shoulders and the brief, almost imperceptible glances toward Ethan. Ethan, in turn, fidgeted with a pen he had picked up from the side table, his attention divided between his mother and his wife, a quiet unease evident in his posture. Margaret did not speak or intervene. She allowed the scene to unfold, cataloging each motion, each glance, and each subtle adjustment as though she were reading a story written in gestures and habits. The faint scent of vanilla from the previous night's baking lingered in the air, grounding her in the familiar textures and aromas of her home, a contrast to the delicate undercurrent of tension she observed. Margaret reflected briefly on the past weeks, the minor changes and quiet directives that had shifted household routines, each seemingly ordinary action now revealing a pattern of intention. She recognized the quiet choreography, the effort to redirect attention and influence interactions, and she took careful note without reaction. Her eyes traced the lines of the room, noting the alignment of picture frames, the way sunlight fell across the polished surface of the coffee table, and the placement of chairs as if marking territories in an unspoken hierarchy. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth spread through her, a simple ritual that maintained her focus and presence. She thought of the conversations she would have quietly later, the notes she would make, the strategies she would consider, all while remaining composed and unobtrusive in the present moment. Outside, the normal rhythms of the neighborhood carried on, children laughing in the distance, a lawnmower humming on a nearby street, birds calling in the trees, ordinary sounds that provided a calm backdrop to the subtle drama of the living room. Margaret allowed her awareness to extend to every detail, noting the small shifts in Vanessa's expression, the way Ethan's eyes flicked toward the windows, and the deliberate sequence of motions in arranging the room. Each observation was stored, a part of the quiet preparation she had cultivated over years of experience, understanding that patience and focus could reveal intentions more clearly than confrontation. Margaret exhaled slowly, her shoulders releasing tension she had not realized she was holding, and adjusted the angle of the chair beside her, a small gesture unnoticed yet affirming her attentiveness. She remained steady, a calm center in the midst of subtle maneuvering, her mind quietly piecing together the narrative of intentions, the soft power of observation strengthening her position and preparing her for the moments when she would act with clarity and precision. Every detail she noted was a thread in the larger fabric of understanding, and Margaret sat in serene awareness, her presence measured, composed, and unyielding in quiet determination as the household carried on. Around her, Margaret shifted her attention to the stack of papers and documents she had left neatly on the side table, each envelope and note a fragment of household management, correspondence, and reminders of obligations long tended to. She traced the edges of the letters with her fingertips, noting dates, scribbled notes, and small annotations she had made in careful, precise handwriting, the routine of preparation grounding her amidst the subtle tension in the room. Vanessa moved about, adjusting the placement of decorative items once again, her steps light but purposeful, as if each motion had been rehearsed, each glance calculated to assess Margaret's awareness. Ethan glanced toward his mother, his expression guarded, as though measuring her reaction, but he did not speak, allowing the atmosphere to linger in quiet observation. Margaret noted the timing of each gesture, the brief pauses, the sequence in which tasks were carried out, cataloging them silently as part of her internal ledger of understanding. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated small details, highlighting fingerprints on polished surfaces, faint dust on the mantel, the way shadows fell across the hardwood floor, all contributing to the intricate awareness she maintained. She did not intervene, did not comment, did not betray the depth of her attention. Instead, she sipped her tea slowly, feeling the warmth settle in her chest, and allowed her mind to process, analyze, and connect observations to patterns she had discerned over weeks and months of careful watching. The faint hum of traffic outside, children laughing from a distance, the occasional bark of a dog, all provided a gentle, ordinary backdrop to the precise observations taking place within the home. Margaret reflected on the moments in past weeks where subtle shifts had occurred, the slight rearrangement of furniture, minor changes in conversation flow, offhand remarks made with casual politeness, and the placement of personal items in ways that suggested preference and influence. Each element contributed to a broader understanding of intentions, providing insight into the quiet orchestration of family dynamics. She moved her gaze from the table to the living room windows, noting the angle of sunlight across the room, the arrangement of seating, the position of objects that might otherwise have been overlooked, and the careful attention required to maintain the awareness that allowed her to perceive the nuances without reacting. Every glance exchanged between Vanessa and Ethan, every subtle inflection in tone, every measured pause became part of the larger picture Margaret silently constructed. She felt a quiet satisfaction in this meticulous observation, the power of comprehension rooted not in confrontation, but in patience and deliberate attention. Her posture remained composed, her presence calm, yet unyielding, an anchor in the room that observed, absorbed, and processed, preparing her mind for the moments when subtle understanding would guide the actions she would take with precision and quiet authority. Margaret remained fully aware, each second reinforcing her comprehension of patterns, motives, and interactions, her focus unwavering, her attention both deep and steady, allowing the household to reveal itself naturally, while she remained poised, composed, and prepared. Margaret moved quietly through the living room, her steps measured, absorbing every subtle shift in the atmosphere. The sunlight had climbed higher, casting bright patches on the hardwood floor that highlighted the worn areas from years of family activity, a living history of moments both joyous and ordinary. Vanessa had just placed a new vase on the coffee table, tilting it slightly, and Margaret noticed immediately, registering the small alteration as a signal of intentional placement. Ethan remained seated, his eyes flicking toward his mother and wife, betraying a hesitation he did not voice, a silent acknowledgement of Margaret's presence without full engagement. Margaret allowed herself to pause by the window, taking in the familiar view of the street lined with maple trees, the distant laughter of children at school, the hum of a passing vehicle, all ordinary, sounds contrasting with the careful observation she maintained within the home. She recalled the weeks of subtle adjustments, minor directives, and nuanced interactions that had reshaped the household, each small act previously overlooked now forming a coherent pattern that revealed intent without requiring confrontation. Margaret settled back into the armchair, the soft fabric familiar under her hands, the cushions molded from years of use, and she let her attention drift over the room in deliberate sweeps, noting the placement of magazines, the angle of photographs, the arrangement of personal items, each contributing to the narrative she silently compiled. She sipped her tea slowly, allowing the warmth to anchor her focus, while mentally mapping interactions, timing of movements, and the weight of each expression, each inflection, and each hesitation. Every glance exchanged, every pause, every measured motion in the room became part of her understanding, a record of the subtle choreography of influence and expectation she had learned to observe over decades. Margaret considered the potential conversations she might have later, the small, precise questions she would ask, the way she could verify the intentions she had cataloged without ever revealing her own strategy. The quiet rhythm of the household continued, the gentle tick of the wall clock marking the passage of time, the distant sounds from neighbors, the ambient noises blending into the background, while Margaret maintained her central, poised awareness. She observed the alignment of chairs and the careful symmetry of decorative items, noting the patterns of movement and interaction, each detail and element in the broader comprehension of her environment. Margaret's breathing remained even, her posture composed, her mind quietly analyzing and connecting the threads of subtle behaviors, preparing her for the moments when observation would translate into deliberate, informed action. She felt the calm satisfaction of understanding, the power of focus and patience, the assurance that clarity would guide the steps she would take, maintaining composure and authority within the quiet, carefully balanced dynamics of her home, fully aware yet unobtrusive, a steady presence that quietly commanded attention through perception alone. Margaret remained seated in her armchair, the morning sun now casting a warm glow across the room, highlighting the textures of the rugs and the subtle imperfections of the wooden floor that told the story of years lived within these walls. She observed Vanessa moving methodically about the room, adjusting cushions and aligning coasters, each motion deliberate and precise, yet unable to mask the underlying tension Margaret had learned to read with careful attention. Ethan glanced toward his mother, his expression cautious, betraying an awareness of Margaret's watchful presence without openly acknowledging it. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth anchor her, while her eyes scanned every detail, the slight tilt of a picture frame, the angle of sunlight on a side table, the precise spacing of decorative objects, each element adding to her understanding of the household dynamics. Memories of past interactions surfaced, casual comments that hinted at exclusion, subtle shifts in responsibilities, small gestures intended to redirect attention, all now forming a coherent pattern of intention that Margaret cataloged silently. She noticed the rhythm of movement within the room, the soft creak of floorboards, the quiet hum of the refrigerator, and the distant sounds of neighbors going about their day, ordinary noises contrasting with the concentrated observation she maintained. Margaret's mind connected these threads, discerning the quiet orchestration of influence and subtle manipulation, recognizing the signs without confronting them, preserving her calm authority. She adjusted her posture slightly, aligning the cushions behind her, a minor action that affirmed her attentiveness and composure, unnoticed yet meaningful. Her awareness encompassed the interplay of glances, the timing of motions, the inflection of voices, all forming a comprehensive understanding of intention and control. Margaret reflected on the careful balance of patience and focus she had cultivated, realizing that observation itself was a form of power, allowing her to perceive and interpret intentions while maintaining her own tranquility. Each detail, each small gesture, became part of a larger mental map that guided her strategy, ensuring that when action became necessary, it would be informed, deliberate, and precise. She allowed herself a brief moment to appreciate the quiet control she exercised, the clarity afforded by patience and attentiveness, as sunlight shifted further across the room, illuminating the patterns she had long since learned to read. Margaret remained poised, serene, and fully present, the subtle tension in the household flowing around her, yet unable to unsettle the steadfast calm she embodied, each second reinforcing her understanding, her focus unbroken, her quiet authority maintained as the dynamics of family life continued to reveal themselves in small, telling gestures that only a practiced and attentive observer could fully comprehend. Margaret leaned back in her chair, the morning light now warm and steady across the room, casting long shadows over the familiar furnishings that had witnessed decades of family life. The living room remained quiet, the subtle hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of children playing outside forming a gentle, ordinary rhythm that contrasted with the meticulous attention she had maintained throughout the morning. Vanessa moved about, aligning cushions and arranging small decorative objects, her careful gestures betraying attention that Margaret observed without judgment, cataloging each motion, each glance, each carefully measured pause. Ethan, seated nearby, continued to shift slightly in his seat, his attention divided between observing his mother and the careful choreography of his wife, the unspoken dynamics hanging in the space between them. Margaret sipped her tea slowly, letting the warmth settle in her chest as she traced the patterns she had seen unfolding over the past hours and weeks, the subtle cues and small behaviors forming a coherent picture of intention and influence. She considered the ways in which family life had been subtly rearranged, routines quietly shifted, responsibilities redirected, all of it forming a landscape she now understood with clarity and precision. Each decorative item, each placement of furniture, each pause in speech or gesture had contributed to a map of understanding that she had built silently, patiently, and deliberately. Margaret's gaze moved to the stack of letters and notes she had carefully organized, the details she had recorded over time now aligning with the broader narrative of household dynamics, her awareness encompassing both immediate actions and underlying intentions. She adjusted a cushion on the sofa slightly, a small, unnoticed movement that affirmed her presence and composure, a quiet exercise in control and observation that required no words. The sunlight shifted again, brushing across the hardwood floor and illuminating the textures of rugs and furniture, each detail reinforcing the depth of her perception. Margaret reflected on the power of patience, the quiet authority that comes from careful observation and measured response, understanding that influence could be exerted without confrontation, that knowledge and attention were themselves forms of strength. She allowed herself a moment of calm satisfaction, recognizing the clarity she had achieved, the comprehensive understanding she now held, and the readiness to act with precision when the moment required. Each glance between Ethan and Vanessa, each gesture, each nuance and tone contributed to the complete awareness she carried, forming a mental map that would guide her choices with subtlety and confidence. The household continued its gentle rhythm, and Margaret remained at the center, poised, serene, and fully attentive, a quiet anchor whose understanding of the interactions around her ensured that when she finally moved, her actions would be deliberate, informed, and unassailable, her patience and observation culminating in a profound, composed strength that filled the room with unspoken authority.